dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
It's Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle. And let's begin exploring the wine glass. Today, we are returning to Italy for another segment of the Wine Scholar Guild's Abruzzo webinar. Join me as I learn from the Wine Scholar Guild Italian Program Director, Andrea Eby, and two winemakers from Abruzzo. Together, they discuss their regions as well as key wine styles. While you are listening, it would be greatly appreciated if you could take 1 minute to subscribe, rate, and review. It takes only a few seconds of your time, but means so much to the show. Also, please be sure to check that box for automatic downloads so that new episodes of Exploring the Wine Glass show up in your next up feed. The next best way to support Exploring the Wine Glass is to tell your friends. If you enjoy the podcast, your wine-loving friends will too. Follow me on all the socials, and finally, don't forget to head to the website exploringthewineglass.com to read the blog, sign up for the newsletter, and keep up with all happenings. Sláinte! Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, Spanish wine scholar, sommelier service, champagne and Côte d'Aron specialist, and a WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials, as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. Stay in the know about all things wine by visiting my website, exploringthewineglass.com. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass. Hey everybody, I want to introduce you to the Wine Tasting Club card. This club entitles members to receive half off wine tasting flights at 100 plus partner wineries, vineyards, and tasting rooms for an entire year. Choose from the VIP e-card plastic wallet that is embossed with your or your gift recipient's name, or you can choose to download a VIP e-card mobile app to your phone. This month's special price is only $29 for a 1-year membership. Take time to order the Wine Tasting Club cards online today and save $5 with promo code WINE5. That's WINE, the number 5. Visit their website, www.winetastingclubcard.com, to order your card today.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for the introduction. Thank you. I have a huge thank you to give to Cristiana and Stefano for joining me today. I was thinking this webinar was going to go in a different direction from the consortio's side of things, and that sort of didn't work out the way it was planned. And so I sent out some SOS emails to Stefano and Cristiana last week, and they were gracious enough to give me a few minutes of their time, give us a few minutes of their time. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity for you all to learn from these people who, are working in the vineyards, who are making the wine, who can tell you more about Abruzzo than anybody. Before we get to Cristiana and Stefano, just a couple things that I wanted to review. Of course, the Italian Wine Scholar Program, a couple people had asked me questions about that last week. If you do have questions, this sort of deep dive into Abruzzo is just sort of a preview of sort of the deep dives we'll do into all of the regions in the central and southern parts of Italy. So a nice little preview of kind of the level of the coursework that you would encounter in the Scholar Program. And then as Sharon mentioned, we have the Italian Wine Essentials coming up. That's going to be launching next year, early next year. This is a little bit of a step kind of a more relaxed approach to to learning about the wines of Italy, where you don't have to, we're not covering every appellation, but kind of the most cultural consumer available wines. And if you're going to be visiting Italy or you're going to be working in a wine shop or a restaurant that really focused on the wines of Italy, this would be a perfect kind of start to learning about this complex world of wine that Italy offers us. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first guest here, Cristiana. This is a picture of her and her brother, Antonio, who she works with in the winery. And of course, I had to put a picture of the dog because I think the dogs are almost as famous as the wines in the sort of wine world. And the pictures on Instagram and everywhere really you can tell that they are part of the family. So I thought I'd put a little picture of them up as well. I will let Cristiana kind of introduce herself and talk a little bit about her winery in a second. And I'll just introduce our second guest, which is Stefano Papetti Ceroni from De Fermo. So I will go back to our guests in one moment. I just wanted to do a couple things on a follow-up from last week. Someone had asked about average vineyard size, and I did have difficulty finding any sort of concrete statistics on this. So I just did a rough calculation on the hectares that I was provided from Abruzzo Consorzio and the number of producers they had suggested there were, and came up with this number. I don't know, Stefano and Cristiana, if you have any thoughts on what you would think the average sort of vineyard size would be in Abruzzo, if that seems reasonable, the 5.6 hectares kind of per producer, or I know there are some very large producers and a lot of very kind of producers that don't farm huge amounts of land. So I'm not sure if that sounds reasonable to you or not.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable number, but not as producers, as a farmer mainly, because the most part of these farmers, they own this small piece of land, this small piece of vineyard, and they sell the fruit. Yes. So I think this number refers to this kind of situation.
Okay. Yeah, because they did say 250 wineries that they were saying. And so this was slightly confusing. And I would agree that 6,000 is probably growers more than producers of wine.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then as far as red and white wine sort of split between those, the statistics I can find from 2022 are about 58% red wine and 42% white wine. So I think that is quite kind of representative usually of the situation. And have you seen a big change in the amount of white wine and red wine over the last, say, 10 years? Have those percentages changed significantly, do you think? Or
changed significantly, and the number of the native Abruzzo white grape variety increased in the past decades, versus the Montepulciano remain just Montepulciano. We don't have maybe just a couple we are talking right now a little bit, but nothing that started a production because they've been discovered in a not traditional area of a vineyard in Abruzzo. Anyway, yes, to answer your question, increase the number of the white grape and wine.
Thank you. And just a quick map, just to kind of reacquaint yourself with the different sort of provinces in Abruzzo, and we will talk to the winemakers about where they are located and how that impacts their wines as we chat with them. I did want to just touch on this quickly again, because I had a couple questions after the presentation. And again, Cristiano and Stefano, if there's anything that you want to add to this, please just interrupt me. There is, what has happened is that originally there were these 8 IGTs. They have streamlined into one regional IGT. So my understanding is that those original 8 IGTs at some point you will no longer be allowed to label under those original IGTs. Is that correct?
This is a very confusing answer, Andrea, because the things are not so well set yet. And honestly, me personally, I'm not into the legal appellation.
Okay.
I'm mostly into the terroir distinctions.
Okay. Well, that's a great answer, and I don't feel so bad that I'm struggling to really understand the semantics of the of the the rules and regulations that are put out. The one thing I did want to point out was somebody had a question about last week about the let me just look at my notes here, the Colline Terramane, which is one of these new subzones, and they said, oh, I thought that was a DOCG on its own right. And yes, you are correct. It is the DOCG for Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. So for the other varieties, you can have these 4 subzones on there. And the exception is for the Montepulciano DOC, where Colline Terramane already exists under its own DOCG. And so therefore that 4th subzone in Montepulciano DOC is actually focused on the commune of San Martino sulla Murcina. So it's a little bit confusing there. I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one who's struggling a little bit to figure it all out. Okay, so just again, I just put up a little chart of the soils there, so that when the producers are talking about things, if there are some aspects of the soil, just to remind ourselves kind of where you can find those different soil types within the region. Okay, so let's get to the really interesting part. We're going to talk a little bit about Trebbiano to start with, and perhaps not all of these things apply to the wine that we're going to be tasting, which is Cristiana's Trebbiano. Cristiana, maybe you could tell us, actually I'm going to skip ahead to this next slide because I have a picture of your Pergola Abruzzese here. Could you tell us a little bit about Tiberio and kind of your philosophy, where you're located, and then you can talk a little bit about Trebbiano, perhaps.
Oh, yes. So I am the winemaker of our small winery, 30 hectares of vineyard, just Abruzzo native grapes, and just native grapes, not just of Abruzzo, but native grapes of this precise area. We work so with Trebbiano Abruzzese, Pecorino, and Montepulciano. In our vineyards, we don't have clones, but just massal selections. It means we don't buy the vines in the nursery, but we produce the vines, cutting and reproducing the old plant. These let us to work with the distinctive flavors for any variety, able to represent the traditional aspect in the vineyard and in the winery, and of course in the wine. Organic winery, this is our Pergola Abruzzese. Pergola Abruzzese is the traditional training system used in Abruzzo in the past. The oldest vines of this vineyard are more than 90 years old, and it's a vineyard we rescue at the end of the 90s and still produce fruit. It's in a very good shape. Our focus is, of course, to pay attention to the balance of the soil, the environment, and the vines to guarantee them the longest life possible.
What do you find what are the unique features of the Pergola Abruzzese opposed to other types of pergola structures that we might encounter in Italy?
Any training system usually developed for genetic aspect of the grape variety in terms of bud breaking, in terms of sap flow needs, and in terms of climate. So the reason why we have Pergola Abruzzese in Abruzzo historically, it's for the need of the shape, of the shade, of course. It's a long training system, so let to produce a larger quantity of fruit. But when I say larger, I don't mean big quantity, because that was the balance with that kind of soils. In the area where the pergola is born, and the Colline Pescaresi area is one of that, the soil is mostly light soil with a high percentage of calcareous soil. So the production was not so generous, and the pergola was a nice system to rebalance, to have a decent yield, able to guarantee the sustainability of the farmers.
Okay. And how high off the ground are those? Somebody is asking how high are the vines trained there?
It's 2 meters. It's roughly 2 meters. Of course, it can depend on the different situation, but you can walk easily inside.
Okay. Okay. And when in terms of your approach to replanting, are you ever planting entire vineyards at once, or are you replanting vine by vine in this case and maintaining the pergola? Like, are any of your vineyards on bio, or?
We do replacement, so we never displant a vineyard and replace all the vines. We replace step by step according to the needs. So if a vine dies, we replace the single vines. Sometimes if we buy a new piece of land, it happens we of course we plant all the vineyard, but it's a long process because the muscle selection production takes a lot of time. It's not something you can do right away.
Right. Okay. Stefano, what's your approach in your vineyards? Do you have any of the pergola, or are your vineyards planted to Guyot?
We do not have pergolas.
Okay.
We have Cordogne and Guyot and some Alberello. Actually, in this time, it sounds very strange. Because it's probably one of the very few farms in our region that doesn't work with pergolas. But we kept actually what we found, and in this farm, the family had never pergolas until 1945. So until the Second World War, in all the central Italy, there was no pergola. Also in our region, in our area, there was just Alberello, basically. And we had also Alberello until the 70s, more or less. It's funny to see the picture of the vineyard during the Second World War. It seems to be in a tomato field, because they had around 9,000 plants, very, very, very short. And so we kept this tradition. I mean, the world is changed, the climate is changed, but at the end, we are still working at our best with this kind of plants and viticulture. So we didn't change any kind of.
Yeah, it really demonstrates that, there's perhaps not one best way to do anything. That's more about, all of the approaches that each of you take in the vineyard. And it's not just, the training system that is the one factor that makes the difference. It's all the other decisions that you're both making that are leading to you having, extremely balanced wines and great expressions of those grape varieties in your different properties. Cristiana, maybe can you tell us a little bit about Trebbiano? Because to students of Italian wine, Trebbiano is very confusing. So maybe if you can share a little bit about Trebbiano in general, and then the Trebbiano that you grow in at Tiberio.
This is a funny aspect because for many years in Abruzzo, and someone still now confuse the Trebbiano's grape varieties with the name of the wine. So first of all, Trebbiano d'Abruzzo is just the name of the wine. There is no wine called, there is no grape called Trebbiano d'Abruzzo. It's like to say Barolo is a grape. Barolo is not a grape, it's a wine. And in Abruzzo right now, we grow different kind of Trebbiano's grapes. The most planted is the Trebbiano Toscano. It's a very rustic variety, able to be planted everywhere in the region. The skin is quite thick, accumulates sugar quite easily, is not so sensitive, so became in the past few decades the most planted Trebbiano in Abruzzo, but it's not the original Trebbiano from Abruzzo. The original authentic Trebbiano from this region is the Trebbiano Abruzzese. It's a very delicate variety. It's a very demanding variety, has a very thin skin, doesn't accumulate sugar easily, suffers mild rot, risk to lose the acidity quite fast. So it's important for the Trebbiano Abruzzese to be planted not everywhere, but in its traditional area where it can fully ripen, but not over-ripen because of the sunburn, because it suffers the sunburn. So that's why the Pergola Abruzzese used to be the traditional system used for this grape variety, because it needs shade, but at the same time needs cool climate, not super hot, otherwise lose the acidity, not too cold, otherwise never get ripen. So the Colline Pescaresi area with altitude, with long growing season are the traditional area for this grape variety. And in Abruzzo, according to the DOC, you can make Trebbiano d'Abruzzo wine using a blend of all kinds of Trebbiano's grapes you have in your vineyard or you put in the blend. So would be very important for any grower to know what kind of Trebbiano they grow in the farm. Any Trebbiano is admitted, so legal, but it's very interesting to taste the differences. And it's very interesting now to see how many different Trebbianos we can have in the bottle. The Trebbiano Spoletino was not possible to taste, to drink, and to buy until a few years ago. Now it's possible to drink, to enjoy, and it's amazing to see the differences between Trebbiano Abruzzese, Trebbiano Spoletino, and Trebbiano Toscano, which is traditionally a grape variety from Tuscany.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. You mentioned a couple things about how susceptible the Trebbiano Abruzzese is to some of the disease and that sort of thing. Both you and Stefano, how was this year in terms of disease? Was the Peronospora a huge issue for both of you? Which variety seemed to handle it best? Either of you could chime in.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Looking for a unique wine tasting experience? Look no further than Dracaena Wines' tasting room in downtown Paso Robles. Located on the corner of 13th and Pine, this charming spot is not your average winery. Founded by passionate wine lovers who also happen to be the brains behind Cab Franc Day, Dracaena Wines is proud to call themselves home of Blanc de Franc. This crisp and elegant white wine has gained a cult following and is just one example of their superb offerings. With over 10 years of consistently receiving 90+ ratings from top critics, these wines are sure to impress even the most discerning palates. So come raise a glass with us and celebrate great wines at Dracaena Wines' tasting room.
For sure, it has not been a very easy season. Actually, the most important problem that we faced was frozen in late March, beginning of April, that made the most damages on the white grapes. And while Peronospora, we had some problem with Peronospora, but not so huge. So for Peronospora, probably we lost between the 10 and 20% of the grapes. So it's not so much. But due to the frozen, we lost more than on the whites. It's a problem that we have basically is to try to face the frozen. We started to prune very late in the last 6-7 years. Yeah.
Okay. And is Pecorino? I've read that Pecorino is very susceptible to frost. Is that correct? Or not?
No, not so much. No, but we have other varieties that had more problem.
Okay.
But Pecorino is a rustic, very rustic varieties in my experience. So we are very happy to work with Pecorino. It very barely have problem with Oidium or Peronospora. Even this year, we have no problem with that. So he's probably the most resistant variety that we work with, actually.
Okay. And Cristiana, how were things in your vineyards this year in terms of disease pressure or frost as well?
Been, of course, not an easy vintage for many aspects. Yes, starting with a few frost episodes, but we've been lucky. We are usually lucky with frost because we are in a very windy area, and the wind helps to clean the air and to push off the humidity. And because the pergola abruzzese is very frost resistant because of the high of the fruit of the buds, they are very tall compared to the Guyot or other training system. The pressure of the downy mildew has been crazy, but once again the wind has been for us a bless, because we have been blessing by this wind and constant, sometimes even too much. In fact, a training system is not a free choice. It's even the picture of many climatic aspects. The wind is one of them. And we lost for downy mildew, honestly, a little percentage, the 15-20%, which is something okay. We don't complain considering the trend of the vintage. At some point, you want to understand if you want to stay sustainable and to stay in the natural, yield of the season, or if you want to obtain everything, which is not our point of view right now. A very critical problem for us, for Trebbiano Abruzzese, considering its genetic character, has been the humidity in the month of September, because in the first weeks of September, we had a lot of rains, and of course, the rain, the humidity affected the health of the fruit, so we needed to select carefully. But it's our work. Working in this way in the vineyard, you cannot pretend to pick all the fruit. But no. When we pick, you need to select. This happens every year for sometimes opposite aspect. It can be humidity, it can be sunburned. So it's okay. It's okay. We don't complain. We reduce a little bit the yield, but we have no reason to complain considering the trend.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead just to I have one slide here that gives a brief sort of overview of the wine Trebbiano d'Abruzzo, so not necessarily Abruzzese, so just to remind people. And then I just have another slide here that's a little bit more specific to your wine. So please, if there's anything that you want to add in terms of maybe you could tell us a little bit about how this wine is made. So I'm tasting the 2020 Tiberio Trebbiano d'Abruzzo, which is made from 100% Trebbiano Abruzzese. So yeah, maybe you could tell people a little bit about how this wine was made.
Yeah, the fruit comes from the pergola you show in the picture. So the average age of these vines is 75 years old. I'm not focused with maceration or pressing or crushing, but it's just free run juice. We destem, totally destemmed, and we work with free run juice. For the reason because the climate change is stressing a lot the skins, so the skins very often are very generous to rich in protein, indigenous yeast, flavors, pigments, and so I don't want to extract too much from the skins, and because I don't want to have too many indigenous yeast. I'm not worried in not having a fermentation as the most part of the winemakers. I have the opposite. I'm concerned for opposite reason, to have too many indigenous yeast with a very vigorous fermentation, super fast. So I prefer to have a wider population of indigenous yeast. The fermentation, we don't work with pied de cuve, so we wait that all the juice start to ferment all together. And the fermentation is in stainless steel because I want I want to not interfere at all with the traditional flavors of this fruit and what these deep roots are able to extract from this subsoil so rich in calcareous, mineral soil, marley. And so that's the result. Usually the flavors are flavors of citrus fruit. It's not so floral. It's mainly about citrus fruit, very, very mineral. It's a very precise wine with a lot of crystallinity, not full-bodied texture, not rich wine, because it's not the meaning of the Trebbiano Abruzzese variety.
I really kind of the crystalline sort of descriptor really resonates with me. You really feel this kind of, crystal kind of structure to the wine that's like bright and brilliant, and just these little sort of concentrated bits of fruit in there that are sort of really, for me, almost vibrating with energy. I find it a very sort of energetic style of wine, but with this real concentration of fruit. And like you said, it's not a full-bodied wine, but it's full flavored. And I really appreciate the sort of blend of precision, and yet it's not so precise that there's not personality to the wine. There is this really beautiful blend of personality and precision that, to me, I see across all of your wines, and that really is something that I enjoy so much about the wines. If you have comments, if you were lucky enough to get a hold of a bottle of this, I must say a big thank you to my friend Stephen, who had a bottle of this in his cellar, because I've unfortunately drank all of mine and I couldn't buy any more in Winnipeg. And so Stephen was nice enough to do a little bottle swap so that I could have a bottle of Tiberio with me today to taste.
Thank you.
But,
thank you, Stephen.
Yes. And hopefully we can get some more Tiberio in Winnipeg soon, because when I put my little SOS out, I had so many people saying, I wish I had a bottle. Can I get more? Where is it? So you have lots of fans in Winnipeg, that's for sure. Thank you for that introduction to your Trebbiano. Can contribute to, but I will move ahead to Stefano a little bit more to focus on Di Fermo and okay, well, thank you so much, Cristiana.
Ciao. Enjoy the conversation. Ciao. Ciao. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wineglass. I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoyt-Budd. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com and sign up for my newsletter at exploringthewineglass.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Podcast music is Wine by Kevins. Until next week, slancha.
Never let you go. No, never let you go. I want a nice glass right now. I'm on TV for my 10,000 tell you. There is always time for a good glass of wine. Never let you go. No, never let you go. I want a nice glass right now.